What's going on, everybody? It's Garrett here for What is Smart. What is Smart is brought to you by Thinkering Media. Thinkering Media is out there covering the real stories on the ground. Happen to be a co-founder there, so self-plug. But you can go to our Thinkering Substack. It's thinkeringmedia.substack.com. You can actually make a donation there. This show doesn't fund itself. We are a nonprofit. So any donation you make goes directly to the production and execution of this show. Does not go in my pockets. I promise you that. We don't need more of that in the world. My friends, today we have an amazing guest. I'm constantly scouring, as well as the team in the background, the internet to find people that are really doing the work on the ground. And today we have Dr. Bailey Ubellacker. I think I nailed it. Yes. And she is the principal education officer, from my understanding, of a company called Educated. And there's a play on words there with AI. And can't wait to hear more about Dr. Ubellacker's work. And with that, can I call you Bailey?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Awesome. You never know. Bailey, welcome to What is Smart.
Thank you, Garrett. I'm such an honor to be here, and I'm really appreciating the conversation that we're going to get to have today and to share a little bit about Educated and my background, and then my co-founder, Emma Ludwig, of Educated, and her background as well.
Awesome. Yeah, unfortunately, she couldn't make it today, but I'd love to hear about her as well, too. We always start What is Smart with an origin story. So we're really looking at, how did you, Bailey, get into this crazy world of education? What brought you there? And then what leads you to the work you're currently doing now?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's wonderful for educators to look back at their own learning journey to kind of see we have so many different trajectories, but it brings us to the same thing, the students and learning at the heart of it. I think my journey really did begin in the second grade. So I was honored to be given the Future Teacher Award and in the second grade. And that kind of got me thinking, okay, so what's going on here? What qualities might this teacher be seeing? What am I doing that pushes me towards supporting and learning and wanting to grow in this environment? From then, I think it kind of planted the seeds. So everything that I was doing and the lens I was looking through is, how are we continuing as a society, as students, learning, growing, supporting one another? So it was a natural flow into elementary education for me, in which I did my undergraduate degree. So added Spanish and psychology in there, knowing that that can help me round out to support our future learners. And I had the wonderful opportunity to do my student teaching in Auckland, New Zealand. And that gave me a lot of global perspective to understand that the schools and the structures that we have here truly do have different focuses. And you can kind of see that in the culture as we're walking around. I mean, students were climbing trees. They were barefoot, right? I had students that didn't come to school with shoes, and that was okay. Very welcome, come on in. They had something called a walking school bus. And in fact, that there would just be one teacher that would walk all the way up and collecting students as they came. So it was a very community feel and something that I knew had to be part of my future education career. And a really good example of that balance between schools are learning organizations, and educated really focuses on that as well, and a place for people to come together to grow and be in community. So after that, I went back to the University of Kentucky, where I had my undergrad, and continued with a master's in teacher leadership. So I think, my education is kind of twofold. I'm all about, I'm in elementary education. That is where my heart is. And I'm also in teacher development. I think it's so important that we're able to support teachers. And I wanted to do that, in the trenches with the teachers, to be able to see, what are we really needing? Things are changing. So through that, I continued, and it was I'm not done learning yet. And I continued with a PhD in educational leadership with a focus on teacher leadership. So my dissertation really focused on how our programs currently, and this was in 2021, 2020. So right before lots of things
You
are
had some
going on.
time to write that paper.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was interesting times.
Right.
But I think it was also a unique spot to take a step back and to see, what do we need, right? Because even before that, what are teachers and educators needing to be successful? And so I think that really helped me see that it's a mindset. It's understanding that we have tenets or a framework that we have to layer on top of whatever is thrown at us, with technology, with the society, which sometimes education fads as they come and go. So if we have our true north and we understand that collectively and support, and also have those structures that are supporting not just once a teacher or an educator graduates an institution,
Mm.
but throughout their career. And so that's in a nutshell kind of where I was with my education. And then I've had opportunities to teach in public schools, nonprofit schools, private schools, and I am currently in the Bay Area with an innovative school teaching fourth and fifth grade math and science. And I'm actually off to a new adventure next year to help lead and launch a school in Palo Alto. Yeah. Yes.
Amazing. My preschool brand, Creative Gardens, we have location in Sausalito. We also have one on the top of the hill off Valencia Street. And absolutely love the area. It's made a lot of changes, but spent a lot of time in the area 15 years ago with the alt school, learned a lot. I think San Francisco in general, and I don't know if you would agree with this, in certain aspects is ahead of the curve just because of the technology hub that it is, and what then allows for a lot of creativity within that. Do you find that area for you is kind of stoking the fire within your heart or motivating you any further than other locations, let's say?
Yes, I think being in the heart of Silicon Valley with people that are ready to push, risk taking, it really has become part of like the thread in the fabric here. I was actually speaking with a teacher friend of mine, and she grew up in the Sunnyvale area. And her school, when she was in school, I think middle school, was part of the Khan Academy pilot,
Oh,
right? And
wow.
so her
Yeah.
school, right before that started, so for her, she's got such a unique perspective, and now she's teaching right in the public
Mm.
schools. And we were actually chatting about she had a little bit of an AI cheating. She teaches high school, and she's like, how do I navigate this? And so we were talking through what are the structures in place? Is it the onus on the teacher to kind of navigate that? Even looking, she was reflective and looking at the assignment, like, did my assignment, open that up? Should I be changing what that looks like? And,
The right
so I,
questions,
mhm.
you know?
But it's here, right? And so I think too, we get it all.
The most recent What is Smart interview was a gentleman named Jason Silva. He's a really kind of out there, outside the box kind of thinker. And he talked a lot about human flourishing, which I then made the connection to what you guys are doing. We talked a lot about even design of space, right? Of how that provokes human flourishing as well, too, improve mood, things like that. How do you, and not necessarily educated in a sense, but how does Bailey define human flourishing within a school system?
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I'm so glad that more of us are really looking into human flourishing, right? Some of the
Yes.
research that's coming out of Harvard. And yes, I will share how Bailey perceives human flourishing, but I will do a plug for Educated very quickly and
Of
Emma
course,
Ludwig.
of course.
So Emma, co-founder, was actually my head of school and the best head of school I had ever had in the past. So much so that about a year and a half ago, we were like, we're coming together. We had a coffee chat and we're like, how are we going to navigate AI, right? It's here, it's present. How do we support that? And we took a step back and we started with human development. We asked ourselves, what are the things that humans and children must hold? What do we know about learning sciences and cognitive understanding that we cannot lose or offload to AI? And so it was really born from that conversation and our years and experience in sitting with children with human development. And so she is working on her doctorate at Vanderbilt currently. And so she's
Very cool.
working and right, adding that and understanding how do we take this knowledge and support organizations through this process. And that's a lot of what Educated does. Yes, we are focused in artificial intelligence, what we're dealing with right now, but we're looking to the future. How will we prepare ourselves to handle what is coming next? How do we stay true to what learners need? And so I think that goes along with human flourishing. What do we need as humans to thrive, right? It is about that happiness. It is about setting those goals, having the support, having the failure, the risk taking, but persevering and getting to that place where you have found agency, where you feel like you have done it and persevered, and something that you can be proud of. So it's we've got to have that productive struggle in order to feel
Absolutely.
gratified in what we're working towards.
You know what's interesting, Billy, is you mentioned perseverance, pride. Those things are not on the report card. Funny enough, maybe in your school they are. Um, it's interesting because as we have these conversations about AI, obviously it's everywhere, is there are those that think fear-based and like, the world's ending, AI is going to take over. But then there's others that understand, I think, and I think we share this understanding that AI is causing us to understand what it means to be human even
Mhm.
more. And I think through that deeper understanding, we can shift that report card, right? Of like your academics, well, now we have AI. It's like, why is memorization based instruction so focused on when we know the things that drive human flourishing, right? Or at least are learning and asking the right questions there. So it's interesting because I think a lot of what we do in our organization maps to exactly what you're doing in your organization. And I think that is such a beautiful thing because it's us recognizing, I think, the people that matter, the people that are into it and wake up, go to sleep, thinking about this constantly, are having these same thoughts and understandings around where we need to go.
Yeah.
How do you think educated in general is driving that mission in action?
Oh, I love this question because I think you're right. This theory to practice. And so we are developing and reading the theory and we're learning all the time. And I think that's one of the things that that learning organizations must be doing. And so as we're doing this, we're also partnering with I'm not sure if you've heard of Reodocrity, right?
Of
And
course.
yes. So right. So we're in talks with organizations that are asking the question of how do we either capitalize or transform, or how do we work with this to support students in the way they need, right? So I think it starts with that deep dive of learning, understanding, putting ourselves in that vulnerable place of like we do not know all of the answers, but
Mm-mm.
but we need to continue asking the questions,
That kind of
and
Socratic,
yeah, yeah.
understanding and thought. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. So we're putting ourselves in conversations, we're researching, and then we've also, Em and I have developed the educated framework. So it's really sitting in 8 kind of principles or tenets that we have identified that students truly need to thrive. And then we'll talk a little bit about learner flourishing. And so that we have a classroom that's conducive to learner flourishing, which is that act that the teachers are actively working towards to help that human flourishing happen. So we've got connection, creativity, communication, intellect, being, meaning, and skills
Mm.
and effort. So those are what we see that the student needs to have to push through, to hone into, to reach the goals that they have and working towards human flourishing through learner flourishing.
Very cool. It sounds like you guys have done a lot of the research work around this before you decided to turn on the camera and start doing content yourself. So I respect that so much. One of the things you said, and you've said a couple of times, is um, we need this shift of organizations, meaning school systems, schools in general, both private and public, going from organizations about learning to learning organizations. And that is important, right? That little shift in word and
Mhm.
vernacular is really important. So tell me about that a little bit of like, what do you define a learning organization as?
Yes, I think that there are many different ways to approach this, but the first step is identifying what is my learning organization doing? What is the focus? What are the areas of strength, of growth? Who do we need to invite to the conversation? What changes do we need to make? And I think it happens both on a systematic level as well as an individual level. So each individual has to identify, am I flexible? Right? We talk about flexible brain all the time. What does that mean? What does that look like when I am in, the staff meeting or, um, introducing a new project that's coming or a new idea that has entered the conversation and you're not quite sure about it and you have questions. So I think right, so it can happen on that micro level, but also the macro level that we have leadership, that we have the structures, the funds, really being able to put effort there to allow that risk taking, to allow people to ask questions, to have some wiggle room, I think, as we're going through that too. Um, Lots of times, I know in education, we joke, sometimes things move very slowly. With AI, we have to move fast, right? So we have an external
Absolutely.
responsibility to meet the need because our teachers are dealing with this right now. I'm right; it is right squarely on our shoulders, and we didn't ask for it. However, we want to make sure that we are taking full advantage of it in a way that's respectful and responsible, and that requires a lot. And one of the things I'm like, how do we capitalize on that so each school, each bubble doesn't have to do all of that legwork themselves?
That's right.
Um, and there are, yeah, a few that I've been tapping into, right, and trying is AI EDU. So I just finished their
Mm,
Trailblazers fellowship. Shout out, they're going to have another opening in August. Viewers, please go look at that and apply. But it gives you a cohort to ask yourself questions and also introduce AI literacy and critical AI literacy into your classrooms through a very systematic and collaborative way. So when people are tapping into things like that and then bringing it back to their organization, that is contributing to the learning. And it's also giving the
absolutely.
educator agency, and
Mm.
feeling a little bit more comfortable about what we're doing. And to know we're all, this is nationally, to know that we're all kind of in the same boat, asking the same
Oh my goodness,
questions
yes.
and
Well,
doing
I
the good
think
work.
and I think we're at a point now where we've had an educational system, at least in the public schools, that, and this is something again that we're highlighting in our work very recently, of the innovator is not only the outlier, but experiences. It's really tough to be an innovator in schools. Let's just say that. And I think we've designed it that way systemically because that's how systems work, right? Or more so large form systems.
Yeah.
Um, and now we're to a place where, because we have to move fast, we're running into that roadblock of, we've told educators to not be innovative in our practice for decades. And now you have to be innovative. And that, I think, what we're experiencing, I don't know what you guys are on it. We work with school systems across the world. And you're right. It is this systemic issue of, we have to move quick. There's more people talking about what that looks like than are actually doing the work on the ground to implement so that it moves quick. I feel like you're doing a lot of that work. We're certainly doing a lot of that work. So, talking about barriers, you see this vision clearly, right? Of where we need to move towards. What have been your initial barriers that you've come up against, and how have you persevered?
Yeah.
Going back to going back to your important tenets, right?
So I think one of the questions we have to ask ourselves as organizations, educators, anyone in this space is, with the arrival of AI, there are different approaches that we can have. Are we going to layer AI on top of our existing infrastructure of what we have and try to, fit that into the classroom? Or are we going to take that bigger risk of understanding, like you said in the beginning, those things aren't on the report card? Are we shifting to develop a competency based or this holistic learner profile? And then asking ourselves again about that end goal question. For much of right, for all of our school's history, we're going towards work, right? It's shifting now. We're going possibly towards college or other opportunities, but there is a goal that society believes is that trajectory. So I think that is what we're up against, of asking the question: how do we systematically desystematize what that might look like, to give
Interesting.
schools the opportunity to find um, what they need to provide for students, because students learn in so many different ways, and I think it's really our job to provide education in a way that a student might need, and that can look very different for different schools.
And different, we're always fascinated with locality, right? How important locality is to understanding the future learner profile and what we should be assessing towards, and how we can set up, which is, I think, the job in education, is to set our learners up for success into a world that they're
Mhm.
going into. And I
Yes.
think more and more as we go along in this kind of path, we're getting less and less of that. You said something super interesting again about this kind of shift in the report card. I watched recently I think it was Jared Horvath. Have you ever heard of him? Jared Cooney Horvath?
That sounds
Yes.
familiar.
He spoke to Congress, and he said, our children in this next generation, Gen Z, are dumber than the previous generation. And this is what he's testifying to Congress. And I kind of have a hot take on that. I'm really interested in your thoughts about it. I won't kind of curate your answer around, but what I would say is, what are we mapping that toward or against? You know what I mean? Their intelligence as a generation. What are your thoughts on this kind of, what I look at as snowballing news, from some researchers that think that this next generation is dumber? Their words,
Well,
not mine.
yeah, first, I'm sorry to hear that we're using language like that about our young learners, and also that it's our responsibility to be supporting them, right? So it's a take a step back and let's look and see what's going on here.
Yep.
But from my experience with our young learners, I learn so much from them. The ability, right? The skills, what they are doing, they are thriving and surviving in the situation that we've created, right? I know we talk about social media. They have had social media. They have been connected from their entire life. So they innately exist in a different world than we do. So
Amen.
I'm right. So I'm of the generation where like my cell phone came in middle school, right? And so I had a different childhood that looked different than what they are experiencing. So the skills, what they're developing, what they see as valuable and important is shifting. The speed with they can learn and, technology. I know one of the things, or even understanding the intricacies, and how intricate it is.
Intricacies.
Thank you.
There you go. Yeah.
Intricacies within social media. So some of the research is talking about how some individuals who maybe didn't have that their entire life are able to have a physical presence and an online presence. But for our younger individuals, that is one. Their online presence is just as important as their physical. It has kind of merged together. And so I think that impacts how they are going to navigate what they see as important. And then it's also our responsibility to show them, again, back to that human flourishing of asking those questions. How are we supporting them to meet that? Are we providing things that are barriers? And I think too, like the attention, we have an attention market, and there are companies
Hmm.
that are buying for our young individuals or young learners' attention. And so we're up against a lot, but I also, that blame or responsibility is not on the student.
Amen to that. And what I would say is, not only am I in full agreement of what you said, but I also think it's a unique perspective to think of the responsibility of current educators. I think you're never going to win when you're the old curmudgeon guy in the corner going, kids these days and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not going to change the landscape. And what I do see is going back to this role of an innovator in a school right now, and how we're kind of seeing this systemic issue of educators, whether it's informed or opinion or experience driven or systemically driven, kind of doing the least. What do you think would motivate these educators moving forward to step up to the plate, understand things like AI, so that we can start sharing in conversation with our learners and not, sage on the stage talking at them?
Yes. So I think in order for that shift to occur, we have to show that it is important and valued by giving resources, right? That can look like funds, that can look like time, that can look like a trade off on our teachers' already busy plates. So if we're not showing that that is the value and we're only saying it, then we're not going to have momentum in that direction. So as an innovator, right, we have to model lead, but we have to give time and space. Like the Trailblazer Fellowship that I was able
Yep.
to participate in, right? That one did have a small fund, right? So individuals that are successful in it do have a stipend. And when you are doing that, you are saying your time is valuable. We're going to pay you for your professional development. That's going to help to innovate. And
That's
that
such a good
sometimes in the
idea.
education space, we continue to get more work without the value being added behind, other than our intrinsic motivation to support and care so
It's
much for our
so
students.
so interesting that you say that, Bailey, because one of the things we experience, because Thinkering Collective operates fellowships across the world, and one of the initial challenges that we faced was we were offering this because it was funded through school systems and our
Right.
and our partners and donors. I mean, we were offering free, and still the
Yeah.
turnout is like, well, I got no time. Like, if this requires time, then and so we've looked at that. Thankfully, we have the popularity now where we're actually doing stuff across the world
That's
and pulling
wonderful.
off these huge projects. So now that becomes a snowball, right? But just to get that initial, and you know how this is as an entrepreneur, it's like it's not real until it happens.
Yes.
It's up here, and then you manifest it, and then it's real, and then you can reflect and go, okay, that's a thing now, right? And so we got the first fellows, but short of paying them. And then we thought, well, I guess like we could figure that out in payment to our educators to take these
Mhm.
things because, like you said, going back to the original question of motivation, we know Freakonomics works. I read that book. It definitely works. What's the biggest motivator for teachers? Time and money.
Mhm.
You would think, unfortunately, it starts as passion. And then the way our system works kind of right now is like going back to that stifling of innovation. That's a big core piece of a lot of teachers' whys. When you rip that out and you say, nope, be a part of the system, we watch that motivation decline. I was going to ask too about as you guys work with and have a focus on AI and its implementation. What are your biggest fears and worries around a rush into that? There are districts where, as you know, like, oh crap, we got to get up on this. Like,
Yeah.
put Gemini into the whole system, and and then in hindsight, yeah, in quarter 3, let's throw a PD in on Gemini with some Gemini trained specialist. What are your worries and fears there?
Yeah, so kind of looking through the proactive versus reactive approach, and again, in education, it's coming fast at us. We're being thrown many things left, right, and center, and so it's hard to know, and it's hard to be proactive about this. Again, I think that's why we focus on the learner, the student. What do they need? And every time that something comes, ask the questions: How will that impact their connection? Right? Will this isolate them, or is this going to open up for collaboration? Like you're talking about, like the Gemini coming in, right? Some of this is being brought in because we're already at a Google school, right? Or because we already have that. So it's an option that we can add to. Many times I think that it's either included or free. So
Mm,
that piece of, well, we don't want students to not have that opportunity. However, how are we going to implement it? What are the procedures, policies, protocol around that? How do we make sure that our stakeholders, our parents, our students, our teachers are knowledgeable of it and also have a say in how that's used in the classroom and beyond? So I think that that's a very big question. Um, with that
that's
being
what
said,
we do
too, yeah,
around here.
yes, we just ask big questions and we work through
Yeah, I
it.
was gonna say, just sit back, lean into it. You have time.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
Um,
The other thing too is there are wonderful nonprofits, companies, lots of organizations are capitalizing on this time and bringing their inventions, their products forward. One of the things that I'm hesitant with districts or schools is right when we're hedging a bet. We're buying something that may or may
so
not
well
be
said.
around in 2, 3 years, and thinking about data as well, security, that's a huge part of it. Not only how is it impacting our students, how will the data be secure? How will we make sure that we're protecting the student, their identity? I know that you might there are some lawsuits. iReady is part. Data is leaked, things are shared, and so I think as educators, it is our responsibility to make sure that we're protecting the whole student, and that includes their online personal information.
And I think too, and so well said. I mean, I could give you kudos for days and days and will after the fact when it counts. We'll magnify
Thank
all
you.
of this, but this is so great. I think one of the things we don't do, Bailey, is listen to the learners about that. And we've interviewed so many learners across the country, and they know, especially high school students. They're like, yeah, you guys are just figuring this stuff out too. So, like, let's actually talk together and
Yeah.
please drive a solution towards an understanding, right? Like, it's a hot take to take phones away in schools. And I have opinion about that, right? There's positives and there's negatives. And I think the one thing we never did in that is like, hey, kids, what do you think about taking phones away? And not in the macro conversation of never, I'm addicted. Like,
Mhm.
no, like we actually have fellows in a project in New York. That's their project is a high school class came together to do the research on best use cases for
Beautiful.
phones and technology in the classroom. And guess what? That turned into a survey that then went around the entire school district to rethink that decision. So, because, hey, I don't know, maybe ask the people that are experiencing this experience that we're crafting for them, is just, I think, such a important thing to point out. Um, with your work with Educated and, it's clearly passion work because you're asking definitely the right questions and then a jump into, from my understanding, building a new school, correct? Um,
Yes. Yeah. That is unrelated. So it's, educated. It's our I've got my full-time, and then we've got educated. So the new school will
got
be
it.
a different than educated, but,
And
it
we
will,
will
of course,
clearly
will be
not
informed.
say
Yeah.
the name for privacy reasons, but
It's
more
not been announced
so,
yet, but
no, 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 no. I think
yeah.
that's great. I think, kudos to you. What motivated you? And again, there's Bailey and then there's educate. I'm really fascinated with Bailey's brain. So I would love to know because I'm a school owner and a school operator, and wanted to do instead of just thinking. Are you in that same mindset? Is that why you're making this all happen?
100%. The school that I am helping bring to the area, it aligns so well with a lot of the research that we have with Educated. It has an AI component, right? That very specific, continuing to work, evolve, learning from mistakes, and that's what I really like about this organization, this school. I do see their organizational learning. They reflect after every semester. How are we going to change? Let's immediately put that into action. And it's focusing on the student loving school, loving that environment, and then building life skills. And because we say life skills, we're able to move with the changes and the needs of the student, of the world. So again, it's setting the educational organization up for success, which in turn sets the student up for success. And it doesn't have this one track. It's able to really see the student as a whole. So I'm really excited about that.
You know what's super interesting is that, you get the same, and this is a selfish part of it, right? I know that you're doing the work in your nonprofit with Educated, almost a nonprofit, working
Yes.
towards nonprofit. Um, because it's passion work, but how fun, and I can tell you from experience, it's really fun to be able to do a lot of the work of kind of meta
Yeah.
understanding and metacognition of learning, and then be able to turn around and apply that. I think that's an exciting, exciting thing. And more of us need to be um, getting on the ground and doing what I think is needed, which is less thought leader conversations at South by Southwest and more people like you and I that are, yes, we have podcasts. Yes, we're trying to get out there, but just getting this podcast together with schedules and everything was challenging. But that's a
Yes.
great thing, right? That's good. Like it shouldn't be easy to get in touch with you or I because we are on the ground. I think doing a lot of that work. Um, Really quick on that is in the past 6 months, we're going to keep it recent. What's an aha moment that you've had that you could share with our audience?
Yeah. And the aha moment does come with, I think, what you just said, how valuable time is. And as I continue to
Mm,
see all of the needs and the ventures, I ask myself, like, where am I putting my time? Where do I find myself most fulfilled? And it is when I am in this work and then when I am with young learners. And so I'm like, okay, that is pretty good. And it's not, and I'm going back to the phone thing, because it's not necessarily when I'm on my phone, right? And in that time, it's hard for us adults as well. The Pomodoro method works wonders. So I also have done some executive functioning coaching, and that is something where you were talking about, like, yes, why we can't avoid the thing that's taking our attention because we are with it 24/7. So we must learn practices and habits. So back to that high school class that was like, well, we don't want to abandon our phones because the moment I get it back, how will I know how to navigate it? Right? So that could have adverse effects outside of the classroom. So growing and knowing with it. So I think the value of time, and
mm.
with that, how am I making sure that that quality, right? So with AI and all of these things, Readocery is helping with that I'm able to look at my time, kind of gamify or quantify it. I know that, and trying to avoid the doom scrolling or even just like the fun joy scrolling, because it is something that can take my attention very easily. And I think too, like, we have gone through our development without that. So how hard is that going to be for our young learners who it's just an extension, and they don't want it to be an extension. Somebody I talked to, that they don't want that, but it's very challenging. It's very hard not to, especially if everyone else is doing it. So that has given me perspective, and it's also right. So I need to be better, but I also need to support our young learners who are still developing and learning
Well,
how
and
to
I
navigate.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
Yeah, and trust me, I share in that aha moment. But I think too, going back to even simpler terms, is the fact that we're like, "Hey, kids, I need everybody to put your phone in this basket. Hold on one second."
100%.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, it's such hypocrisy. And what I don't think the mass public understands, and even the mass public of education understands, is kids see through us. They operate on a less filtered, combobulated brain and can see and sense inauthenticity, hypocrisy, irony, and those things will really lose buy-in of your learner group, of your classroom, when you are constantly, doing what the system tells you to do, but then going against exactly what we're asking, right?
Yeah. And not telling the why, right? So explain the why behind. Well, I want you to actually connect. I want you to look your partner in the eyes to understand each other, right? I think one of the research is kind of showing too of COVID did not help with this of nonverbal cues, gestures, and so making sure that students are able to understand and identify humans' facial features. And as we're working through that, the nonverbal cues,
Is
and so I think too, if I can say that was like, we have to hold on to this. And this is how I want you to communicate in this moment. And this is why this tool is not going to be useful now. Right. And calling it a tool, right? Because when we're in school, a phone can be a tool. It could also not.
Thank
It could be
you.
a toy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so can a car. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like, so can a lot of these different items that we value so much. I think the difference between a phone and a car, though, is a phone right now is an extension, like you said, of how our learners are using it as an extension of the brain. And really, that goes back to this dumber idea. Like, kids knew that far before we knew that. Like, I go out and I talk with teachers all the time and I say, hey, look, like, these are already an extension of our brain. We just don't realize it yet. Our kids do. And like, hey, it's our fault. Like, that's what I keep
Yeah.
going back to. It's like
I know.
my generation, I'm old. Like, I've got a kid in college now. Like it's our fault. Whatever we did in this exploration, like we gotta work with and understand the outcomes.
Yep.
Cause hey, when I was 25, this is the coolest thing ever. I was like, oh my God, I saw this on Star Trek. And now I get to like talk with people and walk around. That's insane, right? So for like almost selfish reasons, now we have to pay the price of that. But that isn't a negative thing. And that's what I love about talking with you, Bailey, is like there are people that can take it down this road of kids are dumber, or there are people that can take it down a road of positivity and optimism, which ultimately leads to creativity and
Mhm.
innovation, which are things that we definitely need in this landscape. So again, I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. And I know, first of all, when did Educated get started?
So I think about a year and a half ago is when we
So you're early
officially
in it.
kind of came together. Yeah. But we've been for about 2 years, we've really been doing the research and looking through. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I would say the reason I ask is don't get discouraged. Continue because the work you're doing really matters. I think you know that, especially if you're working with kiddos and teachers across the country. All right, here we are at this big moment. And again, there's no right or wrong question. Um, we ask every educator, leader, school leader, whomever, thought leader, although I don't love that term anymore. Um, and I'm going to ask you this is Bailey, what is smart?
So that's a big question. And it's also in terms of sometimes we can do it in black and white, smart or not. I like to see it in the nuances, in the complexity, and really looking at it's in the value. So how does that individual value themselves, have that high
Yes.
quality? How do they reach for it? And what are they doing to get themselves there or asking for the support, the help, the risk taking? And again, because everyone values different things. I know that we've like the Gardner's multiple intelligences, right? There are different perspectives on that, but truly let an individual thrive in what they want to thrive in, but also show them an opportunity, right? To dabble, to try other things, find your value because you have it. And that's one of the things I tell my students a lot. Like, oh my goodness, you are so valued. You belong in this community. We absolutely right. And then naming a very specific thing of effort, of growth mindset that we see that they're doing. That helps them develop their sense of self, find their value, and to know like this is what I have to offer myself. And that's all I need to do. Right.
Oh,
So
I
I
won't
don't
even
know.
comment. I won't even, typically I have a comment. I won't. I think that you, one, value. That's the first time in, I think now 50 episodes, I've heard value described as smart. And I think you're so spot on. I think there's a piece like self-awareness that goes along with that too. But that self-awareness doesn't happen unless you have people that can
Yeah.
recognize your value and express it. And I think
And
that that's go ahead.
yeah. No, and to know that it's hard to get here, right? To know that, like, I
Yes.
can see my value and that is all I need. But that's our responsibility to help students and learners and people in general know that that's all we like. The world doesn't have to ask anything of you. You just need to find that, and that's our job to help you get there.
And everything, as you know, happens after that.
Yes.
I just think, and so many kids don't get to that hurdle, and that makes me so sad. Is like, you have so many kids coming out of school now not understanding that value, and then we wonder why, kids get out. The ROI of college in general right now is next to nothing, and it's
Yeah.
not because college isn't valuable. It's because these kids don't know how to apply that. There's no value, worth, understanding of worth. Um, so gosh, man, really,
Yeah.
I mean, I got a little chills here
No.
going on. That's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Bailey, for your time today. Can you tell our many viewers and listeners out there where they can find you to see the amazing work you're doing and your partner, Dr. Emma Ludwig?
Yeah. So educated, we do have a website. It's educated,
We'll put it
EDUC.
up.
Yeah, AI, and TED at .ai. And so that is where you'll find a lot of our resources. We also have a YouTube channel that we are growing, and we're able to really talk with some interesting individuals. We want innovators. We want people that are ready to ask the tough questions and to answer the tough questions. Most recently, we were able to interview Chris Ludwig, who is a senior product manager at
Saw it.
Waymo. So it was really neat to be like, how are we bringing Waymo into the classroom and asking
Hmm.
the question of how do we develop students and learners to go out there and tackle the impossible questions that people are like, that's not going to happen, and then have it come to fruition. So that's
Mm.
right. That's our job as educators. How do we get the students to have grit, perseverance, but also the skills, the collaboration, communication, um, being
And
able to
bringing
synthesize knowledge? Yeah, it's a
industry into it. I mean, that's the best part about it is industry is waiting. That's what people don't understand. Like, I'm sure you have these experiences too of like, you just throw an ask out there and you'd be shocked with
yes.
how many people say yes. Hey, like connect industry to school or industry to education. They want to make that
Mhm.
connection. And for some reason, there's been a long time barrier. And I love the fact that you're breaking down those walls and pulling people in from Waymo that are making this kind of forward-facing, innovative technology that will change and has changed. Go to San Francisco, guys. All you'll see is Waymo, which are self-driving cars for the audience members that don't know, leveraging LiDAR technology. See, I'm a dork. I know
No,
exactly.
no, this is
Yeah.
and the students wanna learn that too, but also, like, peeling back, how do we get there? Because I think that's sometimes the question. We see the final product, but we don't see everything behind. And as we round out too, I'd love to just thank your listeners as well, the educators out there, the leaders, people that are doing the work every single day. I mean, it's hard, it is tough, but we're doing it together, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to share and to convey. I'm looking forward to see how Thinkering Media grows and as we just continue to support one another.
Thank you so much, Bailey. And I'm going to leave it at that. What an awesome guest. What a surprise. And not to say that I had any expectations or preconceptions of what this interview would be. You just never know. And again, such a pleasure talking with you. And that being said, guys, thank you for listening today. For the most recent episode of What is Smart, don't forget to visit thinkeringmedia.substack.com. Check us out on all the socials. Go to thinkeringcollective.org. Look at all of our fellowships. We're currently operating them. So if you want to be a part of the change,